picture this. You're sitting at your desk and you're just staring at a blank, glowing screen.
Oh yeah, the blinking cursor of doom.
Exactly. The cursor is just blinking there. It is rhythmically taunting you. And you have a massive presentation tomorrow. Or maybe it's a hypercritical proposal that has to go out to the entire company leadership, and your career is basically riding on how it's received.
No pressure at all, right?
Right. And you know exactly what you want to say. The ideas are floating around somewhere in your head, making perfect sense in your own mind, but translating them into a bulletproof, persuasive document. It just feels like climbing a mountain without a rope. Your stomach is in knots.
It's a deeply uncomfortable place to be.
It really is. And in that exact moment, what you really need isn't another cup of coffee. What you actually need is a brilliant thought partner. You need someone to bounce ideas off of, someone to point out the glaring holes in your logic before your boss does. Or even just someone to take your scattered, messy notes and magically organize them into a coherent structure.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are thrilled you're here with us today because we are going to explore exactly how you can conjure that brilliant thought partner out of thin air.
It's a scenario every single one of us has faced, usually right up against a looming deadline when the pressure is, at its absolute highest. The anxiety of the blank page is just a universal professional experience. And what we're looking at today changes the fundamental mechanics of how we approach that exact moment.
It really does.
We aren't just talking about a new piece of software here. We are talking about a total paradigm shift in professional preparation.
Absolutely. Today, we have an incredible stack of sources we are pulling from to guide this conversation. We're looking at detailed, step-by-step lab instructions from a Build with AI communications kit. We've got comprehensive feedback reports from actual corporate use cases.
The real-world stuff. Yeah, the real-world applications. And we have video transcripts from AI training modules, which include some really fantastic hands-on insights from Clara over at Gemini Marketing. And our mission for this deep dive is to completely reframe how you think about artificial intelligence.
Which is desperately needed, honestly.
Because let's be honest, a lot of people still view AI as just a glorified autocomplete.
Like a really smart predictive text on your phone.
Right. But we are moving far past the idea of AI as just a basic text generator. We're going to explore how tools, specifically Gemini, can be utilized as a dynamic thought partner, an interactive role-play simulator, and a multimodal translator. We are talking about a toolkit designed to completely revolutionize your professional communication and your daily prep.
The shift here is profound. And it is so essential to grasp the magnitude of it right out of the gate. AI is no longer just about generating words on a screen or churning out generic paragraphs of text. It is about translating complex ideas across entirely different mediums. It's about simulating high-stakes, pressure cooker environments so you can practice your delivery in a totally safe space. And perhaps most importantly, it's about rigorously testing your own blind spots before you ever step foot into a meeting room.
Which is huge.
It is. We're looking at a technology that acts as a mirror, a coach, and a translator all at once. It essentially forces you to be better before the actual performance matters.
So I want you, the listener, to think right now about something you have coming up on your calendar. Don't just listen passively to this, actively engage with it. Maybe it's a high-stakes presentation to the board next month, or maybe it's your annual performance review next week, or perhaps a really tough negotiation with a vendor you've been dreading all quarter.
We all have one of those on the calendar.
We really do. Hold that specific scenario in your mind, feel a little bit of that stress, because everything we're going to discuss in this deep dive is a toolkit custom built for that exact moment. We are going to show you how to walk into that room with an unprecedented level of confidence.
Precisely. Let's start by examining this foundational concept of translation, because it really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. When we hear the word translation, our minds naturally and immediately go to language.
Right, like moving from English to Spanish.
Or French to German, exactly. And the source material actually begins there too. It highlights a really fascinating observation about the inherent limitations of traditional language tools, which, most of us have used for years and years.
Yeah, the material brings up a really personal, relatable example to ground this. A speaker in the training mentions that their parents primarily speak Korean while they mostly speak English. Naturally, over the years, they've relied heavily on traditional translation tools to bridge that gap, specifically mentioning Google Translate.
Which is a tool we all know.
Right. And look, those tools are incredibly useful for basic literal translation. If you need to know where the train station is, they work great. But the speaker points out a massive qualitative distinction when it comes to large language models, or LLMs like Gemini. The LLM doesn't just swap a Korean word for an English word, it does something much deeper, much more nuanced.
It captures the tone and the spirit.
Yes.
That is the critical differentiator, and it's a monumental leap forward. Traditional translation tools historically are largely algorithmic dictionaries. They look at a sentence, find the corresponding words and grammatical structures in the target language, and output a literal equivalent. It's a rigid one-to-one mapping.
It's very mechanical.
Highly mechanical. But human communication is rarely just literal. It is layered with emotion, cultural context, urgency, humor, or frustration. What the source material emphasizes is that an LLM can analyze the input and understand what the person was actually trying to say and express.
I have to admit, my first thought when hearing about AI understanding the spirit of a message is a bit of skepticism. Does it actually understand, or is it just making a really good statistical guess? Like, how does it capture something as intangible as tone?
It's a totally fair question, and it's vital to how we trust these tools. It's not understanding in the human conscious sense. But because these models are trained on vast, unimaginably large data sets of human interaction, they've mapped the patterns of how humans use language to convey emotion.
Okay.
So they recognize the subtle difference between a formal request and an urgent plea based on the structure and choice of words.
Yeah.
It then rebuilds that sentiment in the target language so that the recipient truly understands the underlying intent, not just the vocabulary.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It acts much more like a bilingual diplomat interpreting a sensitive negotiation than a dictionary translating a diner menu.
Okay, let's unpack this. Here's where it gets really interesting because the sources take this foundational concept of translation moving from one language to another while preserving intent, and they just blow it wide open.
They really do.
It is not just about translating from Korean to English anymore. It's about translating from one format of information to an entirely different one. We are talking about multimodal capabilities.
Right. Multimodal is one of those terms that sounds highly technical and frankly a bit intimidating. But it essentially means the AI can understand, process, and generate different types of media, text, images, audio, and video simultaneously.
It breaks down the rigid walls that have always existed between different file types.
Exactly.
The workflow detailed in the training transcripts surrounding this is honestly mind-blowing. Think about how we usually work. Imagine you've just left a chaotic, hour-long brainstorming session with your team.
Sounds exhausting already.
Right. You have a bunch of messy notes scattered across a Google Doc. Maybe you have a PDF of some dense background research someone brought in, a massive spreadsheet full of raw data from last quarter, and an audio file of someone thinking out loud on their commute.
A total organizational nightmare.
Complete nightmare. In the past, synthesizing all of that would take hours, maybe days, of tedious manual labor. You'd have to read everything, manually transcribe the audio, pull the numbers from the spreadsheet, and try to force it all into some kind of narrative.
And by the time you finish synthesizing it, you would be way too exhausted to actually present it well.
Yeah.
The mental energy is entirely spent on the administrative task of collation.
Exactly. But the sources describe a workflow where you can feed all of those disparate formats, the doc, the PDF, the spreadsheet, the audio file, directly into the AI. You prompt it to instantly transform that chaotic mess of mixed media into a crisp, cohesive, 5-minute presentation outline.
It translates the raw data across all those formats into a structured narrative.
It's wild.
And that is just the beginning of the multimodal transformation. The transcripts explicitly detail how you can move fluidly between visual mediums as well. It's not just text in, text out anymore. You can provide a simple text prompt describing a concept and get a fully realized image in return. You can take a static image and ask the AI to turn it into a dynamic video. You can even take a completely disjointed set of images and combine them into something entirely new. The translation is literally happening across sensory outputs.
Think about what that means if you aren't a graphic designer or a video editor. I certainly am not.
Me neither.
The sources point out that most of us would jump at the chance to make our work stand out with impressive visuals. We know a video hits harder than a bulleted list. We just don't have the technical skills to pull it off.
Which brings us to a massive psychological shift in the modern workplace. We really have to look at the behavioral impact of this. The training material specifically notes that this provides a whole new way of working.
How so?
In this new paradigm, your ideas and your creative vision define the strategy, while the AI instantly turns that vision into reality. It bypasses the traditional technical barriers entirely.
But doesn't that make us a little lazy? I mean, if the AI is doing all the creating, aren't we just outsourcing our jobs?
It's the opposite, actually. It forces you to level up your strategic thinking. You no longer need to spend years mastering complex video editing software just to bring a concept to life for a Tuesday morning team meeting. The friction between having a great idea and manifesting that idea visually has been effectively erased.
That makes sense.
Therefore, the value shifts entirely to the quality of your idea. If execution is commoditized, your vision is what sets you apart.
It democratizes creativity. You can build marketing materials, create striking images for your website, or turn a dry 50-page report into a compelling visual presentation with just a well-crafted prompt. You're essentially the director, and the AI is the entire production crew waiting for your commands.
Exactly.
And speaking of directing, let's talk about how you direct the AI to tailor a very specific message for entirely different people. Because the Build with AI Communications Kit has a lab that is an absolute masterclass in this, and it addresses a pain point every single professional deals with: stakeholder communication.
Oh, stakeholder communication. The ability to extract and prioritize information for specific audiences is one of the most practical, high-impact skills detailed in these sources. It's really where the theoretical power of AI meets the daily grind of corporate reality.
Let's walk through the exact step-by-step scenario provided in the lab. It centers around a fictional project called the Cardboard Caravan Service Expansion Launch.
Catchy name.
Right. The lab guides you through using Gemini to take a dense internal report on this launch and draft customized communications. Step 1 is simple but powerful. You click the new chat button and you attach your source document. In this case, a file literally called Internal Report Cardboard Caravan Service Expansion Launch.pdf.
The crucial part is how you prompt the AI once that document is attached.
Hmm.
This is where most people fail when they try to use these tools.
How do they fail?
They just say, summarize this. A summary is generic. It doesn't know who it's for. You have to give it a very specific job description and a persona.
Exactly. The lab provides a specific prompt structure to follow. You tell the AI, I am a project manager responsible for the launch described in the document attached. I am working on an email announcing the launch to the full company. Pull a specific number of key points from the document that I can use in my message.
That is so much better than summarize this.
It really is. You give it your role, the format of the communication, the topic, the audience, and exactly how many points you want. It's incredibly precise.
By establishing your persona as the project manager, you're telling the AI the perspective from which the communication should be written. It anchors the tone. And by defining the audience as the full company, you're setting the appropriate level of detail and jargon.
Right, because the whole company doesn't need to know the engineering specs.
Exactly. The AI knows a company-wide email shouldn't be bogged down in technical minutia. It reviews the attached PDF and extracts the key points that are most relevant to a broad announcement. But the true power of this lab is revealed in the next step, where it introduces a technique called chain of thought prompting.
Yes. This is where you tailor the message for entirely different stakeholders, and it honestly feels like magic. You stay in the exact same chat so the AI remembers the entire context of the Cardboard Caravan document you uploaded.
Right. Context is key.
And you prompt it again. But this time, you say, select some points specifically for two key stakeholders, our CFO and our operations manager. But wait, there's a critical instruction added to that prompt that changes everything. You tell the AI, start by thinking about their priorities based on their roles before choosing the points I should highlight for each.
That specific phrasing, start by thinking about their priorities based on their roles before choosing, is the absolute essence of chain of thought prompting. You're forcing the AI to show its work and reason through the problem step by step, rather than just jumping to the conclusion.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why does that matter so much? Why not just say, write an email to the CFO and an email to the operations manager? Why do I care if it shows its work?
Because if you just ask for the emails, the AI might just guess at what is important, or pull random facts from the document that sound official. By forcing it to first articulate the priorities of a chief financial officer versus an operations manager, you are establishing a logical filter. You're making it build the framework before it builds the house.
Oh, I see.
The AI has to explicitly acknowledge, okay, a CFO cares about budgets, return on investment, capital expenditure, and financial risk. Therefore, I will scan the Cardboard Caravan document specifically for financial metrics.
And it does the exact same thing for the ops manager?
Precisely. It acknowledges an operations manager cares about logistics, timelines, resource allocation, and workflow disruption. Therefore, I will scan the document for implementation schedules and operational impacts.
It's brilliant. You're ensuring stakeholder alignment. The training materials specifically highlight this as a core benefit. You ensure each person receives information relevant to their exact role and priorities. We all know the feeling of sending a massive email update and getting zero replies because nobody knew what part they were supposed to care about.
They just skim it and delete it.
Exactly. This solves that. And it's a massive win for communication efficiency. You're transforming a single source document, that one dense PDF, into multiple, highly tailored communications in a matter of minutes.
Imagine doing that manually. Think about the cognitive load. You'd have to read the report, highlight the finance numbers in one color, highlight the operational timelines in another, open two different blank emails, and try to draft cohesive messages for two vastly different mindsets. The AI does the heavy lifting of contextual extraction. It understands the distinct languages spoken by different departments within the same company.
And then we move to actually drafting those emails using a tool called Canvas. Now, for anyone listening who hasn't seen this, imagine your screen. You've got your normal chat window with the AI on one side, but when you ask it to draft the email, the lab instructs you to select Canvas from the tool's menu.
And it changes the interface.
Right. Suddenly, a dedicated workspace opens up on the other half of the screen. It's essentially a smart text editor right inside the tool. You prompt it to draft the email to the CFO, telling it to include the prioritized points it just found, and you can even specify the format, like asking for bullet points. The AI generates the draft right there in the Canvas editor.
The Canvas editor introduces what the sources call inline edits, which allows for interactive refinement. This is a massive departure from the old way of using AI, where if you didn't like the output, you had to throw out the entire draft, tweak your prompt, and start from scratch, just hoping you got it right the second time.
This inline editing feature, does that actually let you keep your own voice? Because my biggest fear with AI emails is that they always sound slightly robotic, like a really enthusiastic intern wrote them.
Yes, the overly eager AI tone. That's exactly why inline editing is so crucial. Let's say you're looking at the draft email in Canvas, and you realize the subject line the AI generated is way too casual for your CFO. The lab says you just highlight that specific text, just the subject line, nothing else, and an Ask Gemini box appears hovering right over it.
Just over the highlighted part.
Right. You just type your edit request, make this more formal or make this shorter, and it instantly updates just that highlighted portion, leaving the rest of your carefully constructed email untouched.
It allows you to act as an editor rather than a writer from scratch. You can experiment with tone on a micro level. The sources suggest experimenting in Canvas to make your entire message more concise. You're sculpting the text in real time. It is so much less intimidating than writing.
Exactly. You're refining, not generating. It lowers the barrier to entry for perfect communication.
And the final step of the lab is so practical. Once you've tweaked the subject line, refined the bullet points so they sound like you, and made sure the tone is perfect for the CFO, you just export your draft directly to Google Docs. From there, you can share your proposed message with your team to get human eyes on it before you hit send to the actual CFO.
It's a seamless workflow that respects the reality of how corporate approvals work.
It's a workflow that fundamentally changes the speed at which a professional can operate, while simultaneously increasing the targeted accuracy of their communications. But customizing a message for a stakeholder is only one side of the coin.
Sure.
It's great for sending information out. But the sources provide another use case that is arguably even more powerful, using the AI to predict how those stakeholders will react before you send anything.
This is where we get into the really high-level strategy.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this next section of the source material reads like a literal cheat code for the corporate world. We're talking about a Gemini feedback report on a GPS technology refresh.
A very standard corporate initiative.
Very standard. The premise here is highly relatable. Someone is working on a proposal to modernize their company's GPS system. The overarching goal, as always, is to improve efficiency and reduce costs. They have a draft document, a GPS refresh one-pager.pdf. But before they show it to anyone, before they risk their reputation on a half-baked idea, they decide to use the AI to play devil's advocate.
They employ a technique called simulating stakeholder perspectives. They are giving the AI a very specific persona to uncover blind spots in their own thinking. They are purposely inviting critique.
The prompt they use is incredibly detailed, and it goes back to what we discussed about personas. They tell Gemini, act as the chief financial officer whose priorities are maximizing ROI, controlling capital expenditure, and ensuring long-term financial stability, and review the document attached. From your perspective, is there any information missing?
This is a phenomenal use of AI. We all suffer from the curse of knowledge. When you spend 3 weeks heads down writing a proposal, you become totally blind to its flaws. You assume things are clear on the page because they are perfectly clear in your own head.
Exactly. You know what you meant.
Right. By asking the AI to adopt the persona of a skeptical CFO, you are creating an artificial stress test for your ideas. You're stepping outside your own brain.
But wait, isn't the AI just making sweeping generalizations about what a CFO cares about? Like, how do we know its feedback is actually accurate to a real human executive? Are we just preparing for a stereotype?
It's an important distinction. Yes, it's utilizing a generalized archetype of a CFO based on its training data.
Yeah.
But in corporate finance, those archetypes exist for a reason. CFOs universally care about ROI, CapEx, and hidden costs. The AI isn't going to predict your specific CFO's quirky preference for pie charts over bar graphs, but it will absolutely catch the structural financial flaws that any competent CFO would flag.
That makes total sense.
And the feedback the AI generates in this CFO persona is astonishingly granular. It doesn't just say, I need more math. It rips the one-pager apart in the most constructive way possible.
We have to dive into the exact feedback the AI provided because it perfectly illustrates how this tool elevates your strategic thinking. Let's break down the specific critiques one by one. First, the AI, acting as the CFO, attacked the cost breakdown.
Right. The user's original proposal just confidently stated the initial cost was $25,000 for hardware and software, period. Moving on.
Just a single number.
A single vague number.
Yeah.
The AI flagged that immediately as dangerously vague. It said that a CFO would require a detailed breakdown of hardware versus software licensing. And critically, it pointed out that any recurring annual fees after the first 12 months were entirely missing from the proposal.
Because if there's one thing a CFO loves finding out about 6 months later, it's a surprise recurring software fee.
Oh, they love that. It's their favorite thing.
That is a classic blind spot. A project manager might just look at the upfront check that needs to be written today. They just want the system installed. A CFO is looking at the total cost of ownership over the next 5 years. So how did the user resolve this massive piece of feedback?
The user went back to the AI with a proposed resolution, showing they did the extra homework. They broke down the $25,000 cost, stating it was $10,000 for hardware, which is precisely 50 units at $200 each, and $15,000 for a 12-month software license.
Okay, so they split it up.
Yes. And crucially, they uncovered and added the missing information that the AI caught. There is a $12,000 annual renewal fee.
The AI responded by validating that resolution, noting that the $12,000 annual renewal is a key piece of information that must be integrated into the financial analysis to assess the true total cost of ownership. Think about the reality of that for a second. That one interaction with the AI likely saved the user from a very public, very embarrassing dressing down in the actual boardroom.
Without a doubt.
If they had walked in with the original draft, the CFO would have asked about renewal fees, the user would have frozen, and the proposal would have been dead on arrival.
It's the difference between looking like a visionary and looking unprepared. But the AI CFO didn't stop there. It moved on to the ROI calculation. The original proposal claimed, quite proudly I imagine, that the new GPS system would result in a 15% fuel cost savings.
Which sounds great. 15% is a solid number. But the AI pointed out that this percentage lacked any baseline. It asked, what is the current monthly or annual fuel expense? 15% of what? $100 or $1 million?
Right.
Without that baseline, you cannot calculate the exact dollar amount of savings or accurately project when the initial investment will actually be offset.
Another brilliant catch. A percentage means absolutely nothing to a finance officer without the raw data behind it. It's just marketing fluff until it's tied to the dollar amount.
So the user resolves this by providing the missing baseline. They state that the current annual fuel expense for the fleet is approximately $100,000. Therefore, a 15% saving equals exactly $15,000 saved annually.
Which completely changes the narrative of the proposal. Because as the AI points out in its validating response, this clarification shows that the projected savings of $15,000 will offset the initial $25,000 investment in less than 2 years.
That strengthens the proposal significantly. It changes the pitch entirely. You're no longer walking in saying, hey, we need to spend $25,000. You're walking in saying, this investment pays for itself in 20 months and then becomes pure profit. That's a pitch a CFO can get behind.
Exactly. The third major critique the AI leveled was about the implementation timeline and operational disruption. The original proposal lightly mentioned taking a phased approach.
Just a throwaway phrase.
Right. The AI CFO zeroed in on that.
Yeah.
It noted that while a phased approach was mentioned, it desperately needed a high-level timeline showing exactly when the capital expenditure would occur, how long the pilot and full rollout would take, and, most importantly, an absolute assurance that the implementation would not disrupt current operations.
Again, the AI is thinking exactly like an executive whose primary job is risk mitigation. Disrupted operations mean lost revenue, frustrated clients, and chaotic supply chains, which directly impacts the bottom line. Phased approach is often corporate speak for, we haven't figured out how long this will take.
It really is.
The user's resolution to this critique is to build a strict, rigorous 3-month phased timeline. Month 1, hardware procurement and pilot group selection. Month 2, pilot program testing and initial driver training. Month 3, full fleet rollout and the actual decommissioning of the old system. The AI reviews this detailed timeline and agrees that a 3-month schedule seems aggressive but achievable, and that the clarity minimizes executive concerns about prolonged disruption.
And we must not forget the final critique regarding the subscription model. The original proposal merely mentioned exploring a subscription model as an alternative. The AI CFO stated that a simple comparison table of the one-time $25,000 CapEx cost versus the estimated monthly or annual subscription cost over a 3 to 5 year period would be crucial for making a true financing decision.
You can't just say you're exploring it. You have to actually present the data.
Yes. It's basically forcing the user to do the hard homework they clearly tried to skip in the first draft.
What is incredible is that the lab concludes by having the AI draft a brand new 2-sentence summary of the plan based on all these new, hard-won details.
Yes, and I want you to listen to how much stronger the resulting summary is compared to where they started. The AI drafted, this GPS technology refresh, is a strategic investment that addresses outdated systems and is projected to save $15,000 annually from a $100,000 fuel budget, ensuring the $25,000 initial investment is offset within 2 years. The plan includes a 3-month phased implementation to ensure a smooth transition, modernizing operations for continued growth, and client service improvement.
Wow, that is a rock-solid elevator pitch.
It really is.
It has the baseline budget, the exact dollar amount of savings, the offset timeline, and the implementation schedule, all packed into 2 incredibly dense, persuasive sentences.
What's fascinating here is the psychological transformation of the user throughout this process. The training materials highlight the key takeaways from this exact exercise: increased confidence, stronger proposals, and the integration of diverse viewpoints. By using the AI to simulate the stakeholder, you identify the gaps in your thinking before you present. You are testing your idea against multiple personas in a completely safe environment.
The user who walks into the room with that revised, bulletproof strategic investment plan is going to feel immensely more confident than the user who walked in with the original, vague one-pager. They've already anticipated the toughest questions. They've essentially sparred with a shadowboxer version of their boss.
Exactly. And speaking of sparring and practice, the sources introduce another tool that takes this simulation concept off the keyboard, out of the text editor, and into the real world. We are talking about rehearsing for reality using Gemini Live.
This is where things get truly futuristic. This is a significant leap in the interaction model we've been discussing. Thus far, we've been focused on text-based prompting typing instructions into a chat interface, or highlighting text in a document editor. Gemini Live, which the sources note is a feature available directly on the mobile app, shifts the paradigm entirely to verbal communication.
It completely removes the barrier of the keyboard. The transcripts feature a live demo from Clara, who works in product marketing on the Gemini app at Google. She introduces Gemini Live as a way to have a natural, free-flowing, back-and-forth verbal conversation.
So no typing at all.
None. You aren't typing prompts and waiting for text to generate. You are talking to your phone exactly like you would talk to a real person on a phone call.
Clara explicitly frames this feature around high-stakes conversations. We're talking about sales pitches, major presentations, difficult one-on-ones with employees, situations where your performance, your tone of voice, your delivery, and your on-the-fly persuasiveness are absolutely crucial to your success.
Let's dive into the specific role-play scenario Clara demonstrates in the transcript, because it is fascinating to see how the AI handles conversational nuance and the unpredictability of human speech.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Clara's playing the role of a salesperson for our old friend, the logistics company Cardboard Caravan. Her goal is very specific: to book a meeting with the logistics manager at a company called Terry's Trousers, who recently submitted a vague web inquiry.
She sets the stage verbally, talking right into her phone. She tells the AI, I call and you answer the phone. I'm ready to play the logistics manager at Terry's Trousers. Let's do this.
The AI completely assumes the persona instantly. It answers the verbal prompt with, "Thank you for calling Terry's Trousers. How may I direct your call?" It's playing the receptionist to start.
That's a great detail.
Right. Claire introduces herself, mentions the web inquiry, and asks what they're hoping to achieve with a new logistics partner.
And the AI, now in character as the Terry's Trousers logistics manager, provides a very realistic set of corporate pain points. It doesn't just say, we want cheaper shipping. It says they are looking for a partner to streamline their shipping process and reduce costs. It mentions they have been experiencing specific delays and inefficiencies, and they desperately need a reliable solution to ensure their trousers get to customers on time.
Think about the sales muscle memory that builds. It's giving Clara the exact objections and needs a real prospect would give on a cold call. Clara responds with empathy, a crucial human element, saying she totally understands the frustration and that Cardboard Caravan has actively helped other companies in their exact position. She then goes for the close, asking for a brief follow-up meeting to discuss how they can help specifically.
The AI manager agrees, asking what times she is available. Clara suggests next week, promises to follow up via email with some details, and offers to send a relevant case study to prove their track record. The AI agrees to next week and asks for the case study. The role-play concludes successfully.
Now that is a great practice run. Gets the jitters out. But the true value of this tool, as Clara points out in the training, happens after the conversation ends. The role-play is the performance. The critique is where the actual learning happens.
Right. Clara notes the crucial next step: asking the AI for actionable feedback on her performance. She asks Gemini to provide feedback on her approach, specifically requesting it to break it down into strengths, weaknesses, and suggestions for improvement. While the transcript doesn't read out the exact word-for-word feedback she receives, Clara's reaction is incredibly telling. She looks at her screen and says, wow, there's some great feedback in here that I can definitely use to practice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this provides on-demand practice. The sources highlight that you can rehearse difficult conversations anytime, anywhere, right from your phone. You can stumble over your words, you can completely forget your pitch, you can try different aggressive negotiation tactics, all in a completely risk-free environment.
The transcript also outlines a secondary, highly creative use case for Gemini Live that I think a lot of people will resonate with. Clara mentions using it to talk through out-of-the-box concepts for a new product launch.
Yes, this is a brilliant application for verbal processors. People who think best by talking out loud and pacing around the room rather than staring quietly at a blank page.
She explains that she will just start talking to the AI. Maybe she's walking the dog or commuting. She's fleshing out this messy, raw, unstructured concept verbally. And then the magic trick. She asked Gemini Live to synthesize that rambling, hour-long conversation into an actionable project proposal.
It takes the unstructured brainstorming and organizes it logically. Clara notes it creates an action plan with clearly outlined next steps that she can immediately share with her leadership. It bridges the massive gap between having a raw, fleeting idea and executing on it professionally.
Think about how much stronger you'd be if you could predict exactly how a stakeholder will react. Think about a difficult one-on-one with a direct report who is underperforming or asking your boss for a raise. Usually you only get one shot at those conversations. The adrenaline is pumping, emotions run high, you lose your train of thought, and you almost always walk away thinking, I should have said X instead of Y.
Exactly. The hindsight is brutal.
With a tool like this, you can have that exact conversation 5 times before the real meeting even begins. You can program the AI to be aggressive, defensive, or totally apathetic, and test your emotional responses to every variable.
It fundamentally alters the dynamics of high-stakes situations. You're building conversational resilience.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about some truly incredible capabilities today. translating the deep spirit of a message, transforming a chaotic mess of notes into a polished video presentation, flawlessly tailoring a single email to a CFO's hidden anxieties, and verbally role-playing live sales calls with a grumpy logistics manager.
It's a lot to take in.
It sounds like magic. It sounds like the AI does all the work. But the training modules we are sourcing from are very explicit about bringing us back to reality. There are strict warnings woven throughout these materials that we absolutely cannot ignore.
And we shouldn't ignore them because they define the boundary between using AI effectively and using it recklessly. The central thesis of the entire training is that AI is your thought partner, not your replacement. That is a critical distinction that must dictate how you use it.
The sources are very clear. You must review absolutely everything the AI produces. You have to ensure that the output actually matches your specific perspective, your intent, and your company's brand voice. You cannot just blindly copy-paste an email it wrote and hit send.
It requires the human element. The human must provide the context, deeply understand the ultimate audience, and vigorously verify accuracy. The training materials suggest a very smart approach, using the AI for pointed critiques during your drafting process. You maintain control of the core content, but you lean on the AI to review it.
Right, like asking the AI, how might our audience of first-time homebuyers respond to this video ad? Or does this presentation clearly explain our proposal to a non-technical audience? You're asking for its analytical feedback, not asking it to do the original thinking for you.
And we must talk about fact-checking, because this is where reputations are ruined. The sources provide a very clear directive regarding factual representation.
Yes, the specific example used in the training is transforming a dense data report into an infographic. The warning is blunt and uncompromising. If you are representing something as fact, you must double-check that the AI got the details right. If it pulls the wrong revenue number from your dense spreadsheet when making that presentation outline, and you stand up and present that wrong number to the board, that is entirely on you, not the AI. You can't blame the software.
The ultimate responsibility always rests with the human user. The training heavily emphasizes exercising your human judgment above all else. You have to constantly ask yourself if the use of AI is appropriate, given the specific context of the situation, the sensitivity of the data, and the expectations of the audience.
The AI can simulate the skeptical CFO flawlessly. It can role-play the stressed logistics manager. It can draft the perfect email structure, but it cannot take the reputational risk. You hold the risk, therefore you must hold the reins.
Well said. It's a powerful set of tools, arguably the most powerful we've seen in a generation. But it demands a responsible, attentive operator.
Let's quickly recap the incredible journey we've taken through these sources today. We started by looking at how LLMs transcend basic, literal translation to capture the true tone and spirit of a message, whether that's moving from Korean to English or moving from a messy pile of audio notes and PDFs to a polished 5-minute presentation.
We saw how multimodal capabilities allow you to generate images and videos with simple text prompts, turning your creative vision into reality without needing years of technical design skills.
We then explored the deep customization capabilities outlined in the communications kit. We watched a user take a dense cardboard caravan launch report and, using chain of thought prompting, perfectly tailor its key points for the entirely different priorities of a CFO and an operations manager. We saw how the Canvas workspace allows for instant, inline refinement of tone and length, acting as a real-time editor.
And then we dove into the simulations. The stress test of the GPS technology refresh proposal was eye-opening. Seeing the AI devil's advocate rip into a vague $25,000 cost estimate and force the user to build out a robust ROI calculation with baseline fuel costs and a phased 3-month implementation timeline that is literally the difference between a rejected idea and an approved budget.
And finally, we looked at Gemini Live, where Clara showed us how to verbally spar and role-play a sales pitch with Terry's trousers, getting actionable feedback to build real-world confidence, or using it to verbally brainstorm and synthesize out-of-the-box concepts into actionable project proposals while walking the dog.
It is a comprehensive toolkit for professional empowerment, fundamentally changing how we prepare for the moments that matter.
To you listening right now, think back to that daunting scenario you pictured at the start of this deep dive, that high-stakes presentation, that critical email, that dreadful negotiation. You now have the masterclass blueprint. You know how to use these tools not just to work a little bit faster, but to walk into any room, face any stakeholder, and feel completely unshakably prepared for the hardest questions they could possibly throw at you. You have your brilliant thought partner on standby 24/7.
This raises an important question, though.
A philosophical one that builds on everything we've explored today. If we can now use AI to perfectly simulate our audience's toughest objections, if we can flawlessly tailor every single communication to their specific psychological and professional priorities before we even say hello, how does that change the fundamental nature of human surprise and spontaneous connection in business? If everyone walks into the room perfectly prepared by an AI, what happens when two AI's strategies collide in the boardroom?
That is something heavy to chew on before your next big meeting. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you leave feeling informed, inspired, and completely ready to tackle whatever blank page is waiting for you. Until next time.